You know how sometimes you hear about a crime and you can really picture the victim, the whole scene.
Mm,
Well, what if I told you about a crime where the victim isn't quite a person, at least not in the way you'd normally think?
okay, I'm intrigued.
We're diving into the pretty shadowy world of synthetic fraud today. It's this financial threat that kind of operates in the gaps, and we've got some, frankly, eye-opening info from FinCrime Intelligence to walk us through it.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as exploring identity theft, but with a significant twist. Instead of just stealing your identity, criminals are actually building brand new ones, completely from scratch.
Building them, like, ha-
Yeah, like assembling a digital ghost, you could say. They mix real and fake info.
yeah,
Our goal here is really to get under the hood, understand how it works, why it's so slippery, hard to get a handle on,
right.
and ultimately, who pays the price, and crucially, how it's being fought.
Yeah.
And yeah, the FinCrime intelligence insights are key to this.
Okay, a digital ghost. I like that analogy. But how do you even begin to build a fake person in a way that can actually trick a bank or get you money?
Well, the foundation usually is a real Social Security number. That's the key piece of real info.
A real SN. Whose?
Often it belongs to someone whose credit isn't being actively watched. Think maybe a child or an elderly person, sometimes people who just haven't used credit much.
Ah, okay.
And
Under the radar.
exactly. Yeah. Then they bolt onto that SSN a completely made up name, date of birth, address. Everything else is fabricated.
So it's that mix, the real SSN with the fake details, that makes it work.
That's what makes it so deceptive, yeah. It looks legitimate enough at first
Just
glance.
doesn't sound like a quick smash and grab. It sounds more like, I don't know, a long con. How did these digital ghosts actually become credit worthy enough to steal serious money?
That's where the patience factor comes in. It's
Yeah.
definitely a long game. These synthetic identities, they start small. They apply for, say, a secured credit card with a tiny limit, maybe a small installment loan.
Okay, testing the waters.
Precisely. And then they diligently make payments, even just the minimums, over months, sometimes years. Slowly, carefully, they build up a positive credit history for this fake person.
Like nurturing a real credit score, but for someone who doesn't exist?
You got it. And once that good history is established, then they can start aiming higher, bigger loans, cards with much higher limits. That's when the real damage happens.
It's almost, I mean, diabolical in its patience. And that slow build must explain why it's so tough for the usual fraud detection systems to catch it.
That is exactly the problem.
If they're acting like a good customer, what's the red flag?
Right. Traditional fraud detection is often geared towards spotting weird activity on existing accounts, sudden changes, big unusual purchases. But here, the synthetic identity is building its history cleanly, from zero.
Makes sense.
And what's really tricky is, unlike normal identity theft, there's no actual person whose life is being turned upside down who's going to call the bank screaming, "That wasn't me!"
Yeah, no one's sounding the alarm. The fake person isn't going to complain about fraudulent charges on their own account.
Exactly. So these profiles can just sit there active, sometimes for a really long time, quietly building up creditworthiness before the bust out, where they max everything out and disappear.
So the banks, the lenders,
Yeah.
they're essentially being tricked into trusting someone who isn't real. And they might not know until it's way too late when the debt just goes bad.
Precisely. They might even unknowingly verify this seemingly clean credit history
Yeah.
and give more credit, just digging themselves deeper without realizing it. The eventual loss just looks like a regular default.
Okay, so we are definitely not talking about small amounts here. What's the overall financial damage? It sounds like this could be a serious hole in the system.
Oh, it's huge and growing fast. FinCrime Intelligence highlights it as one of the fastest expanding financial crimes globally. We're talking billions, with the B, lost by lenders every single year.
Billions just from this.
Yes. And what's kind of worrying is how these losses often get classified. They frequently just end up in the bad debt bucket, like any other loan default.
So they're not even necessarily seeing it as fraud.
Not always clearly, no. And this miscategorization, it's dangerous. It can mean institutions underestimate their actual risk exposure. It can even distort the data used for risk modeling, which could potentially impact loan pricing for everyone.
Wow, okay. That's a ripple effect I hadn't really considered. These hidden fraud losses could actually make borrowing more expensive for all of us.
It's a real possibility.
And I imagine regulators must be starting to pay pretty close attention if it's distorting the risk landscape like that.
Absolutely. The FinCrime intelligence sources strongly suggest we're going to see, and are already seeing, increased regulatory scrutiny.
Hmm.
They want to make sure financial institutions have strong enough systems to actually detect and monitor for these synthetic identities.
So what might that look like? More rules.
Possibly, we might see regulations pushing for more standardized ways to verify identity, maybe even mandating more data sharing between institutions to spot these fabricated patterns earlier.
Makes sense. So banks, credit card companies are the obvious targets, but are other types of businesses getting hit by these digital ghosts too?
Yes, definitely. The impact is wider than you might think. The data points to uh, telecom companies, healthcare systems, even government benefits programs, and of course the whole fintech sector is a big target.
Fintech, right. Lots of online account opening there.
Exactly. Basically, any service where you can sign up remotely and where there's some kind of credit extension or value transfer involved, that's where the vulnerability lies.
It really feels like any system built on, remote trust can be exploited. So how are these organizations trying to fight back? How do you unmask a ghost?
Well, the key seems to be using multiple layers of defense. The sources talk about layered identity verification processes.
Mm,
It's not just one check.
like a series of hurdles.
Kind of. Think multiple checkpoints. This includes things like biometrics fingerprint or facial recognition if possible. Also, device fingerprinting, analyzing the actual phone or computer being used.
Okay, looking at the tech itself.
Right. And then there's the really powerful stuff, AI-driven anomaly detection. These AI systems are trained to sift through enormous amounts of data and spot tiny inconsistencies or patterns that a human analyst would likely miss. They're looking for the digital tells of a fake identity.
AI as a detective, basically.
Very fast, very data-hungry detective, yeah.
Are these sophisticated tools actually, making a difference? It sounds complex.
They are crucial, but it's not just about fancy tech. Cross-referencing the application data against reliable, authoritative sources is still vital.
Like checking if the name and SSN actually match up in official records.
Exactly. Checking against government databases. Existing credit bureau files. Does this combination actually exist legitimately? FinCrime intelligence also really emphasizes the need for better collaboration, building secure digital identity networks, and just more industry-wide sharing of threat intelligence.
It feels like everyone kind of needs to be pooling their knowledge to get ahead of this. Are governments helping coordinate that?
There's definitely growing awareness among regulators about the systemic risks here. In the U.S., for instance, the Federal Reserve has been pushing to get everyone on the same page with a standard definition of synthetic fraud and improving how it's tracked and reported.
Standardization helps, I guess. You need everyone measuring the same thing.
Precisely. Consistent data is essential if you want to develop effective countermeasures that work across the whole financial system.
And are the banks and credit bureaus just waiting for regulators to tell them what to do, or are they innovating themselves?
Oh, far from it. They're heavily invested. The sources show credit bureaus and major banks are developing their own pretty advanced analytical tools. They're using complex algorithms to spot suspicious patterns of behavior,
Like what kind of patterns?
like, say, rapidly opening lots of small accounts very quickly, or subtle inconsistencies across different applications submitted over time, things that might signal someone is building up a synthetic profile for a future bust-out.
It really does sound like that constant cat and mouse game we always hear about in cybersecurity. Detection gets better, so the fraudsters adapt.
It absolutely is. And that's exactly why technology, especially AI and machine learning, is so critical, as FinCrime Intelligence points out. It's about early detection.
Catching them before they build up that big credit line.
Exactly. These AI models can process just vast amounts of data, way beyond what humans can handle, looking for those tiny, subtle anomalies. Deviations in user behavior, weird application patterns, inconsistencies in the digital footprint left behind.
The glitches in the matrix, like you said.
That's a pretty good way to put it. Flagging the high-risk profiles before the major financial hit occurs. That's the goal.
Okay, so let me try and wrap my head around this. We're talking about synthetic fraud, this complex, growing crime. Criminals build fake identities piece by piece, often using a real SSN but fake everything else.
Right.
It's super hard to detect because it mimics legitimate behavior, builds credit slowly, and crucially, there's no immediate victim screaming foul.
That lack of an immediate victim is key.
The result is billions in losses, often hidden as bad debt, which messes with risk assessment. And fighting it requires this multi-pronged approach. Layered ID checks, biometrics, AI, device checks, collaboration, regulatory action.
You've got it. That layered defense and the role of technology are absolutely central.
It's quite a summary. It really highlights how hidden and impactful this kind of crime is.
It really does. It operates beneath the surface in many ways.
Yes. Definitely sheds light on a corner of the financial world most of us, thankfully, never have to deal with directly. But it makes you think, doesn't it? About that constant push-pull between needing really tight security for things like this and the smooth, easy digital experience we all want.
That's the eternal balancing act, isn't it? Security versus convenience.
Yeah. And as these defenses get smarter using AI and everything else, how will the fraudsters adapt next? That feels like the big question, the next chapter in this hidden financial fight. Thanks for really pulling back the curtain on this one today.
My pleasure. It's a complex topic, but definitely an important one to understand.